Hey there, Alex Kidman here, and a couple of days ago I had a viewer query about battery life. They just bought a new phone and they were having some severe battery life problems with it by the sounds of it. Now, in that particular case, honestly, it kind of sounds like you might have a bit of a duff phone, but I'd certainly at least try another charger. But this problem of battery life and how to make the most of it does come up in my comments from time to time, and I thought, well, I may as well throw a quick video together just highlighting some of the things that you can do to try and make the most out of your phone's battery life. But first of all, I've got to start with a bit of bad news. So what's the bad news? Well, the bad news is if you've got a phone and you've had it for a few years and the battery life isn't holding up the way it used to, then while some of the tips I'm going to give you might help a little bit, the reality is that battery chemistry degrades over time and your battery is probably on the way out. Basically, every smartphone battery is on the way out. It's just a matter of when, not if. But older phone batteries are just not going to do as well. And that's actually true even if you got like a new to you shrink-wrapped phone that no one else had ever used, but it had been sitting on a warehouse shelf for 3 or 4 years. That thing is not going to have the same battery life that it had 3 or 4 years ago, even though it hasn't had the other stresses and strains on its battery that a phone that someone had used all that time would have had. So time is the enemy of battery life, and at a certain point, you do have to say, right, I just need a battery replacement, or in some cases, a phone replacement might be the smarter option. I feel like I should also quickly address that thing of how do I make my phone's battery last longer over years? How do I maximize its life? Now, there are some phones that will do this automatically, but generally not supercharging your phone all of the time can be somewhat helpful. Also using wired rather than wireless charging simply because of the differences in heat that it creates. If you've used a wireless charger continually, you're probably aware that your phone heats up a bit, and heat and batteries are not exactly good friends either. A little bit of wireless charging here or there, not so much of a drama. Doing it all the time, and especially for some of those really fast charger options that you get with some specific phones, not necessarily the greatest idea. But all of this stuff is also super variable. You can be the one who gets the unlucky battery where it does fail after a couple of years. Meanwhile, your mate who's got the same phone, done the same things, their battery just toddles on. So you've kind of just got to see how it goes over time. But what I'm going to talk about mostly are just tips for day-to-day battery life, just to be clear. So where do we start? We start with the screen. Why the screen? Well, because your phone's display is one of the big culprits when it comes to battery rundown, and there's a couple of ways that you can alter your usage to lower your overall power drain. First of all, kind of obvious, but start by dimming the display. On most phones, that's most easily achieved by sliding down the notification panel from the top or top right and sliding the brightness slider downwards. On some models, if they have adaptive brightness in the settings, you may need to disable that to avoid having your brightness far up again in the phone's display settings when you move from a light to a dark area. Now, obviously, there is a fine line to tread here. You don't want your phone to actually be unviewable by you, but this is a very simple way to slightly lower your power usage. It's also worth having a look at your phone's display setting options, and specifically around details like how long it's set to run before it automatically locks the screen, and indeed what, if any, always-on display settings it offers. Setting it to more rapidly lock and dim the screen and minimizing use of lock screen widgets can also help to boost your phone's battery longevity. The other aspect of screen usage that's worth considering, though this isn't true for every phone model, is whether it's got a variable refresh rate and what that's currently set to. So a number of Android phones and a much smaller cohort of iPhones support higher refresh rates, 120 Hz is typical, which leads to a smoother screen experience. Now, that looks lovely, but it can have a serious effect on overall battery life. Setting a phone with a high refresh rate option to a fixed 60 Hz can lead to lower power consumption. However, there is again another catch, or at least a potential catch. Different manufacturers offer different options here, with some only offering a dynamic setting or 120 Hz fixed option, which may mean that for some content, it'll flow back up to 120 Hz anyway. If you've got a phone with an LTPO screen that can do from 1 Hz to 120 Hz, you're generally likely to be better off leaving it at the dynamic setting, letting it manage it itself to get the battery saving benefits of those lower refresh rates, but this will vary depending on how you use your phone primarily. Basically, experiment here to see what you're comfortable with and how you can make the most out of your battery life. Outside of the screen, the next area where you should concentrate on trying to make the most out of your battery is with the radio. And I'm not talking here about the thing that your dad had in his car dash way back in the day. Your smartphone or your feature phone can do everything it does because it utilizes a bunch of different wireless technologies for communication functions, and each and every one of those uses power even when you might not be using your phone. Now, if you need all of your functions of your phone all of the time, then you'll just have to put up with the battery power bill as a result. But the chances are you can probably make do without some of them some of the time, especially if you're just trying to make it to the end of the day. Make it till when you can get to a power point or to a charger. So which services are these and how do you disable them? First of all, there's Bluetooth. Now, Bluetooth is a relatively low power technology, especially Bluetooth LE, used for wirelessly connecting to devices quite close to your phone. Classically, we're talking headphones here, but also things like smartwatches and fitness trackers apply here. Now, if you're not using Bluetooth headphones and you don't have a smartwatch or a fitness tracker, disabling Bluetooth can save you some power. Typically, you can do this from your phone's Bluetooth settings menu or via the Bluetooth icon on most phones' notification blinds. I think everyone knows what Wi-Fi is, but it's worth keeping in mind that if you're out and about and not connected to your home network or work Wi-Fi on your phone, it's still expending energy looking for Wi-Fi networks on the not unreasonable basis that you might want to connect to nearby networks. Now, if that's not the case, or again, if for other reasons such as security, you only want to use your phone's mobile data connection, then disabling Wi-Fi can reduce your phone's power requirements. That's much the same story as with Bluetooth. It's within the Wi-Fi settings of your phone, or typically via the notification blind. Again, varies by model, and some will only semi-disable Wi-Fi. It can be a little bit odd. Now, mobile data, of course, is another radio, and that also uses up power. You could potentially disable those if, for example, you were only going to use your device on a Wi-Fi connection. The larger downside to doing so, of course, is that it'll typically disable your actual calling ability as well, which most people don't actually want. But obviously, if you do, if your usage of your phone was only going to be absolutely local, then yeah, it's not a bad way to go about it. And of course, you've got the nuclear option here as well, which is to throw your phone into airplane mode, disabling all onboard radios in one fell swoop. And if you've ever wondered why your phone's battery always seems to last quite a while on those longer flights, this is why, because it's not trying too much in the way of radio work. The other factor that affects smartphone battery life is your app usage. It's logical enough as a consequence because the more you use your phone, the more the battery runs down. The reality here is that some apps are genuinely much more power hungry than others, and in some cases, some apps or certain releases or updates of apps can outright misbehave, slurping up electrons in the background even if you're not using that app at the time. So how can you tell? Well, luckily, most phones will let you see which apps are the biggest battery hogs. Dive into the settings and then the battery section of your settings, and this works whether or not you're on an iPhone or an Android device. Once you've identified your power-hungry apps, you've got some choices to make. Some of them may be harder than others. If your battery is being slurped up by must-use apps, I'm not going to judge you whether that's a productivity app, a game, whatever, but if it's a must-have app, then you may have to accept that using that app is going to drain your battery away. But if it's for an app that you're only lightly using, or one that you forgot you'd installed but it's sitting there draining your battery away in the background, then kick it to the curb, uninstall that app, save your battery life. It's also worth identifying your app battery burners as well, because it can happen that an app misbehaves and chews up more battery power than it should, and it's worth checking in that case if there's an update to that app that might fix the issue. Sometimes something as simple as the classic reboot of your phone, literally switching it off and switching it back on again, can fix that. And obviously, sometimes it can't. And now for my final tip, and this one might just be the hardest tip for people to manage because it's about managing yourself. How many times do you check your phone per day and why? Now, we can get into stuff that becomes a bit lies, damn lies, and statistics. There's various studies here. Some will claim that people check their phone every 15 seconds. Some will claim that the average is every couple of minutes. Honestly, most of these studies, while not statistically irrelevant, are not necessarily relevant in an individual level. But I think we all know, I think we've all been there. I've certainly been guilty of this one myself, of checking your phone a bit too much. You're bored, or you're really desperately waiting for someone to get back to you on a social network or an email or some vital piece of communication. And so you check your phone and you put it back in your pocket and then you check your phone again and then you check it. Totally, it's a thing that happens. But the reality is, of course, again, the more you use your phone, the more the battery runs down. And the trick here is essentially about breaking that habit. And you can work out what's going to work best for you in this respect, whether that's saying, I've only got so many minutes per hour where I'm allowed to look at my phone, or putting your phone deliberately out of reach so you can't actually access your phone in that way. That's another way to handle that. But essentially realizing, hey, I check my phone a lot, and consciously thinking I shouldn't do that is a very powerful way to make your battery last longer, because the less you use your phone, the longer the battery will last. And I know some of my viewers are going to be going, Alex, that's really obvious. Don't treat us like idiots. I'm not trying to treat you like idiots. The reality here is this is a really simple way to make your battery last longer, and honestly, kind of to get into maybe some healthier lifestyle habits as well. And again, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I've been guilty of this myself. I've stared at a phone for way too long. Go out there, smell the roses, go for a walk, pat the dog, do other things, and use your smartphone. Make it part of your life, don't make it control your life, and then its battery will last even longer. So those are my quick tips for battery endurance. Got any of your own? Stick them in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe.